I may need to talk to them afterwards as a farmer. So my name is Noah Sanders, and I am a disciple of Jesus, a husband, father, farmer, and an author and an educator. My family and I live on a farm in Alabama where we grow food for ourselves and for others, as well as train Christians in how to glorify God through agriculture. The title of this talk is Dirt to Dollars, Does Farming Pay? But to be more accurate, the topic I want to address is the viability and the value of farming. As Christians who want to advance the kingdom of Jesus through enterprise, we need to know, can agriculture pay both practically and eternally? This is a question I get asked by Christians interested in farming. And I'm not going to answer every question about this topic in my brief time today, but I hope to share some helpful perspectives with you. Some of the reasons I care about this topic is farming was the first job God gave man. God put Adam in a garden and made agriculture the foundation of any healthy economy. Farming is essential for freedom. We're dependent on whoever supplies our food. And only profitable farming can be sustained. If we want to keep eating, farms have to make financial sense. And only eternally significant farming has value. Successful farming must advance the kingdom of God. Now, I know that not all of you are farmers or are going to farm, but here's why I think you should care about this. We all participate in an agricultural act, which is eating. And the challenges that farmers face affect you, and your eating decisions affect agriculture. We must be faithful with the first thing God entrusted to us. If we aren't faithful with the land, we can't expect God to add to us mining, manufacturing, trade, etc. Agriculture affects the viability of every other kingdom enterprise. And if you can't eat, you aren't free to do much of anything else for God. In this presentation, I hope to look at the challenges facing agriculture, identify some of the root causes, and consider the impact the heart of Jesus can have on the viability and the value of farming. I personally love farming. There's just something deeply satisfying about caring for God's creation and growing things. And I know there's many other people that are attracted to agriculture, particularly because of the lifestyle. There's enjoyable work, there's fresh food, the ability to work as a family in a beautiful setting, and the satisfaction of fulfilling that God-given itch to grow things. And as much as farming is romanticized and admired by many, if we look honestly today, there's many serious challenges for those that are involved in agriculture. On a home production level, the skill of growing food is growing scarce. Although gardening and homesteading has great appeal to many people, it's actually not as common as it used to be. I live out in the country, rural in Alabama, and it's actually very rare to see a garden. And if it is one, it doesn't grow much more than a few tomato plants. Growing food is really much more of a skill than you think, and many people go from joy to overwhelm to discouragement because they underestimate the skill involved. And to be honest, one of the main reasons we're losing the skill of growing food is because it's much easier to purchase and prepare food from the store. On the commercial side of farming, there are challenges with profitability and sustainability. Almost 90% of farm households in the U.S. receive only 10 to 20% of their income from the farm. The rest of their household income comes from off-farm jobs. So only a very small portion of farmers are actually making their living from their farm. Most farms are dependent on the vulnerable import of expensive outside inputs and aren't the resilient, self-sustaining operations that they used to be. And also, many of these inputs are dangerous to farmers and to creation. And in addition, government subsidies, like we just heard, and regulations can mess up economics and hinder innovation. Here is a chart from the USDA showing how the majority of income for beginning and established large-scale farming households comes from off-farm income. The light green is off-farm income, and the dark green is the farm income. On a personal level, farmers are facing challenges related to an aging farm population. This is due to the fact that not many young people are able to get into farming or aren't interested. And the stresses of our large-scale production models, debt, and lack of community has driven many farmers to despair, such that agriculture has 4 times the suicide rate of any other profession in the U.S. This chart from the USDA shows how the average age of the farmer has gone from 50 in 1978 to 58 in 2012. When any industry sees this type of decline, it doesn't indicate health or a good future for that industry. So what's at the root of all this brokenness in agriculture? Well, it's a very complex issue, but as Christians, we know that the visible brokenness that we see is just a symptom of the spiritual brokenness that's a result of sin. Agriculture suffers as a result of broken relationships. God created man to live and function within a set of relationships. Man's relationship with God, with himself, with others, and with creation. And when Adam rebelled against the Creator, his broken relationship with God broke all the other relationships. This resulted in shame in his relationship with himself, blame in his relationship with others, and pain in relationship with creation. And today we have whole industries devoted to trying to fix these relationships. In farming, we have two major worldview camps that try to address the challenges facing agriculture, and each have a different source they look to for solutions. Extreme industrial ag sees these challenges and says, mankind and science can fix it. And extreme environmental agriculture sees these challenges and says, nature can save us. But at the end of the day, man's solutions have a tendency to contribute to the problems. On the industrial side, the solutions that science offers through controlling and manipulating creation tends to be very productive, but questionably sustainable. And on the environmental side, the solutions that a nature-centric perspective offers can sometimes can be very sustainable, but questionably productive. Both of these camps have truths to them, but if we place trust in anything other than God, then we will only get corrupted truth that results in failure. And interestingly enough, when God put Adam in the Garden of Eden, he told him to both care for and work the land, which requires balancing both sustainability and production, something I believe only a relationship with God can allow farmers to truly do successfully. So I would like to propose that the solutions to the problems in agriculture today is the Lord Jesus Christ. He alone can reconcile us to God and begin to heal the other relationships in our life, including with creation. He is the only sure foundation to build on. 1 Corinthians 3:11 says, no one can lay any other foundation than the one that's been laid, which is Jesus Christ. If we don't build on Jesus, even good agricultural solutions won't last. But how do we practically do this? What do we actually do to allow Jesus to heal our farms? Well, if you remember in the parable of the sower, the difference between the fruitful and the failed crops was the soil, which represented the heart. And as we're seeking to see the kingdom of God advance in agriculture, we must start with the heart. Specifically, if we want to build on the foundation of Jesus, we must build on his heart. We must seek to express the humility, faithfulness, and unselfishness that Jesus modeled in the way we approach agriculture. So let's take a look at each of these foundational attributes and see how they can impact the way we actually farm. First, the foundation of humility. Jesus was the most humble person that ever lived. And one of the ways he modeled this for us is by living in complete submission to his Father. In John 5:19, he says, truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. Even though he was God, Jesus modeled humility by looking to his Father for direction on what he should be doing. So as farmers, we can show the humility of Jesus by doing the same thing. When we approach the question of how do we grow food, we can ask, well, what does my Father do? And practically, this can look like acknowledging God's ownership of us and our farm, recognizing his wisdom in creation, and seeking to observe and apply the designs we see in creation through the methods that we use to grow food. As a matter of fact, some of the most productive and innovative examples of agricultural methods today are by Christians who have approached food production with this very same attitude, this humble attitude. In Africa, the widely acclaimed no-till farming approach of conservation agriculture was developed by a godly man named Brian Oldreive, who was losing money on his farm and went to the bush, as they call it, the woods over there, and asked God to show him how to farm. Here in the U.S., probably the most famous innovator in animal husbandry is Joel Salatin, self-proclaimed Christian libertarian environmentalist capitalist, who desires to honor the design of God in the pigness of the pig. And just gaining popularity in the U.S., Korean natural farming is an incredible natural soil fertility system that was developed by a Christian Korean farmer who desired to imitate God's design for healthy soil. On my own farm, 2 ways that I try to display humility and do what my Father does is by minimally disturbing the soil and keeping it covered, just like we see in God's design and creation. And even in Alabama red clay, this has produced amazing results. So second, we have the foundation of faithfulness. Jesus modeled faithfulness for us by doing everything that his Father gave him to do. In John, he tells us, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work." Jesus further elaborated on the importance of faithfulness in the parable of the talents. When a certain man was going away on a trip, he entrusted each of his servants with a different amount of money. And when he got back, he called them to him to see what they had done with what he had entrusted to them. The ones who did what he wanted by putting their money to work and gaining more were given even more. But the one who didn't do anything with his except keep it was stripped of his money and punished. So some principles we can draw from the parable of the talents are, first, God owns everything. We are just stewards of what we've been given. God gives us each a unique set of resources and circumstances. God judges us on faithfulness with what we have, not in comparison with what others have. And if we're faithful even with little, God will add more to us. You see, God defines success as faithfulness. And for me, it's easy as to try to succeed as a farmer by getting bigger and doing more. But if we have a faithful heart, we'll stop trying to focus on getting more, but instead be wholehearted with what we've been given. And if we are faithful, we'll see the increase and the profit that we were chasing in the first place. Sometimes, especially among Christians, profit tends to be a bad word. But in order to be faithful farmers, we must produce more than we consume. The only alternatives to profit for survival is begging and stealing. Profit is merely what God adds to faithfulness, and it's an indicator of faithfulness. In order to be faithful and profitable, we must manage what God has given us in a way that reflects his nature. So some very effective management principles that I've used that can help us to make a profit is to do things on time, to a high standard, and with minimal waste. And when you do these first 3 principles, God adds a fourth for free. He adds joy. And joy is where our strength comes from to continue being faithful. Foundations for Farming in Africa and the micro-farming movement going on here in the U.S. are both examples of extremely profitable farming that focuses on tending the smallest amount of land possible, but tending it exceptionally well. Some of these farms are beautiful and often gross over $100,000 an acre without even using a tractor. If you had a garden or field that looked like this, wouldn't it bring you joy? So our final foundation is that of unselfishness. Jesus was such an amazing example of unselfishness when he came to earth. Mark 10:45 says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." This spirit of unselfishness and generosity is one that we farmers should take to heart. Jesus said, "For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." God adds to generosity, and he takes away from selfishness. If we want farming to pay, we must be generous in our care for the land. In addition, our motive for farming can't just be personal success and accolade. Our motive in succeeding in farming should be to share and to bring hope to the last, the least, and the lost. We can't just keep the blessings we received ourselves. We're blessed to be a blessing. This is the heart of Jesus and the mission of the gospel. Interestingly enough, some of the things that we desire to achieve often through agriculture are accomplished by God when we have a heart for the poor. Many people start farms or homesteads to be resilient in tough times. But often this can be accompanied by a fearful, self-preserving, protect yourself from the poor mentality. But God tells us in Psalms 41 that if we make a plan for the poor, he will preserve us in times of trouble. Other people want to see an agrarian solution to the problems we face in the U.S. But in Isaiah 58, we're told that it's through having a heart for the poor that God will heal a land. Agriculture can play an important role in bringing hope to the last, least, and lost. And as an example, this is a picture of a well-watered garden, a name taken from Isaiah 58. It's a model garden in a visible location in this town that was put in to reflect the humility, faithfulness, and unselfishness of Jesus. It's a teaching tool to bring hope to a community and share about Christ. I believe that if we as Christians learn to start expressing the heart of Christ in the way we grow food, it will provide real solutions to the challenges faced by agriculture. If we approach the plants and animals entrusted to us with humility, God will show us how to fix our production methods. If we seek to be faithful with what we've been given, God will add profit and joy that can give hope to those struggling with despair. And as we share with those around us, I believe it will raise up a new generation of farmers attracted to the abundance that Christ offers. As we think about whether farming is viable and valuable, remember that not all farming is the same. A farm is a reflection of the heart of a farmer. And only farms that reflect the heart of Jesus in a farmer will be practically viable and eternally valuable. Even though excellent farming can enable you to make a living as I've done, the reason I farm is not primarily for the money. It's because of the eternal fruit that I see God producing through my obedience to farm for Him. And as I learn to model the heart of Jesus through agriculture, I get to experience God on a deeper level, to see God draw people to Himself, and look forward to a well done, good and faithful servant at the end of my life. And to be honest, I'm not super concerned about making a whole lot of money on my farm, because I'm living the life that I would live if I had all the money in the world anyways. I've found that the greatest reward you can get from farming is intimacy with the Creator. And this only comes when you're doing it not just because you think it's a cool and great idea, but because He's told you to do it and you've obeyed. So I want to challenge everybody, no matter what you do, seek to know God and experience Him through your work. Proverbs 3 is familiar to most of us. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. To acknowledge Him can also be understood to mean to seek to know Him more, even as a husband knows his wife. And this is what makes our work exciting, makes it worth the sacrifice and the suffering, the pursuit of intimacy with Christ our lover. So whether you're a farmer or not, you can join me in advancing the kingdom in agriculture. First, ask God what your role is to play. It may be supporting God-honoring agriculture, growing some of your own food, or farming for your community. But take time to listen and only do what God tells you. Second, start where you are with what you have. Be faithful. Third, find ways to share with others as God blesses you. It may be food, knowledge, or love, but find a way to give. So to conclude, does farming pay? Well, in my experience, if God has called you to farm and you build your farm on the humility, faithfulness, and unselfishness of Jesus, He will make your farm both practically rewarding and eternally valuable for as long as He calls you to it. Thank you.